The more connected, or the more aware I am of the connection, because I don't think we're ever not connected, the more aware I am of this connection, the more aware I am of what it wants to do in any given moment.
Welcome, Tom. This is my good friend, Tom McKeown, and I'm so excited to have you on my little show today. I asked Tom to be a guest on my show today because of his story. He has a beautiful, but maybe a little bit challenging life story. And I feel like it's so important for him to share because as we go on our spiritual journey and transitioning from who we are today to who we're going to become, we have a lot of ups and downs. And I feel like Tom's story is one that can be shared and be related to. And not only the beginning of the story, but the different aspects and the different ways that he found his spiritual truth. And I'm excited for you to share that with everybody.
Well, good. Well, thanks for asking me to be here. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah. So Tom's profession, or side hustle, I guess I should say, at this time is shamanic drumming. And so what I want to do is basically, let's start from the beginning of your story. I think that we could probably even go back to your childhood where things may have gone a little awry in our minds to, the way that things played out to bring you to the point to where you are today. So would you kind of share a little bit of your story from your childhood to the point of kind of searching for your spirituality?
Sure. And I think what we were talking about before we started recording is important, and that my story's not so different from everybody else's. There are a lot of us that have experienced trauma in our past. My trauma started when I was pretty young. I had some things happen to me that for some reason happened to me, but they separated me from myself. I dissociated from who I was, I think, at that time. And over the course of the next few years, things accumulated. Traumatic events just kept happening for whatever reason. My dad, who I love, and he's no longer with us, but I adore him, and I always have, but he was pretty violent and angry and rageful, and I was the scapegoat in the family. So that came to me mostly. My brothers and sisters experienced some of it too, but I'm the one who kind of fought back, and that puts you in a position of receiving more. I'm grateful that it happened because it drove me into the things that happened that led me to where I am today. And one of the options that happened when I finally got out of high school, my one goal was to get out of Oklahoma, and go find my way and just be free from all that rage and anger and emotional abuse, mental abuse, physical, all those things. What I didn't know was that I was going to take it with me. I did not know that. So I took it with me into the Navy and began to, let's just say, experience all that pent-up anger coming through me in harmful ways to myself and other people. And then one day, somebody introduced me to a drug. And I was anti-drug at the time it happened, but he talked me into it, and I tried it. And is it okay if I say what the drug was?
Absolutely.
Okay. It was methamphetamine. I've been drinking a little, but I didn't, I got drunk and things like that, but that never really solved the problems. And the first time I did meth, I felt like I'd always wanted to feel. I felt awesome. I felt confident. I felt happy. I didn't know at that time, and I didn't know when I was a child, that I suffered from depression. All the signs were there, but we didn't look for that at that time. So it really took me from feeling down to feeling ecstasy in just a matter of seconds. And I remember having this thought, and it's the second time I'd had it in my life. The first time was when I had sex for the first time. And this time it was the meth experience, and the thought was, I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. It just feels great. And I probably would still be doing it, but it doesn't last, as you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I spent a few years just chasing that, doing as much of it as I could with other things as well. Cocaine, just name a drug, and I probably tried it until it came to an end. And it came to an end abruptly. I was living in Dallas and not paying rent, riding a bicycle everywhere because I couldn't afford a car. I probably could have afforded a car, but all my money went to having fun. And then one day, a thought came crashing into my mind, and it said, you need to go home and you need to get some help. And so I did. And is that enough? I'm trying to be kind of vague about the story a little bit and get through it, but
no, I mean, I think that you're right on track, and for many different reasons, because I think a lot of people that'll be watching this have been through some of the similar things, and whether it's from words that are hurtful, parents or classmates or friends that may say something that that makes you feel small or belittled. Those are things that we hold on to and may not even recognize that we hold on to them. So by telling your story and recognizing that there was also another underlying situation with depression, all of those things that happened to you, were just building on that initial inside thing, whether it's chemical imbalance or whatever is the cause of the depression. It just keeps stacking and stacking and stacking. And so what I think it's important for people to understand is that due to your situations, you were just looking at a way to get happy, to let it all go. And I feel like a lot of people don't understand why people look for fixes, quick fixes, what's going to make this happen? What's going to make me feel better? What's going to solve my problem? And again, this is part of our journey in, where we're going to be able to let that go, those past things, those past beliefs, those past thoughts, let them all go so that you're not focused on what's going to fix me.
Right.
That quick fix. We always want a quick fix.
It's interesting that you say that. And I believe that, my choice was drugs. Coming out of a situation like that, other people's choice might be to work incessantly. It might be to just disappear. There's all kinds of different ways we react to that. Mine was just drugs did the trick for me. But it's interesting you say that because recently I was thinking about the patterns in my life. I'm 63 now, right? And I'm still looking at this stuff, which is awesome. But I thought, I never realized this, but the thought is maybe over the course of my life, because my experience was so traumatic, it was like going from one traumatic experience to the other. It seemed that way. It may not have been that way all the time, but that's what it felt like. That's what I became used to, and that's what I recreated in my life. Even after the drugs stopped, that pattern continued for a while. And it's interesting to look at it in that way and understand that, wow, it just because I stopped using the drugs and alcohol and all that, that pattern continued for a while, in relationships and not just in relation, the way I worked, the way I interacted with people, I created trauma or drama, that created, because I felt comfortable there for the longest time. Well, I didn't, but
Well, and that's, I'm so glad you said that, because that is a pattern that people that repeat, who that old saying about being addicted to the chaos, because you don't know any different. And if you're not staying in that fight or flight or that anxiety, anxiousness way of living, the adrenaline running all the time, when you get quiet, you become uncomfortable.
That's right.
Yeah.
When you're not used to peaceful feelings, it feels like boredom. I got to do something. I got to do something.
Yeah. And I mean, and I found myself being that way, just with work. It's like, I got to do. Oh my gosh, I have a quiet moment. I've got to do something else. Well, it's still an addiction. It's still, it's not labeled, that way. But, these little things, the chaos that you're so conditioned to, if you don't recognize it, how uncomfortable it is when you get silent, that's when there's still something that needs to be broken. And I say broken because my Akashic guides always say that you have to break, and literally they always show me a stick, and they're going to break you. And so when you continually stay in that pattern of being addicted to the chaos, at some point something's going to break. And did that happen for you?
Well, sure it did.
Mm-hmm.
I can remember like it just happened. The moment my days when I was living in Dallas consisted of waking up. I worked in clubs and bars and restaurants, easy money, easy access to drugs and things like that. But I did as much as I could all the time. And I always had the thought there was something going on out there. And if I didn't get out there, I'd miss it, which is a weird thing. But the last night that I went out, I had been trying to go to sleep. I'd gotten into bed early and I had $140, which was a lot of money for me. And I couldn't stay in bed. I just got up and said, I'll just go down to my local bar that I went to a lot and hang out with those guys for a minute. I won't drink or anything. I'm just going to go in and say hi. Well, as soon as I walk in, they had a beer and a shot for me, which is what I said, well, you can't put it back, So I started drinking. And then I wanted cocaine. We did mushrooms. We did cocaine. And I was sitting at, a buddy of mine showed up and we headed out to buy some more cocaine. And we went to somebody's house that we didn't know. And they were shooting it up. And I'd never shot it up before. I was a snorting genius, right? That's what I did. I snorted. And I was like, save me some. And they didn't. So they were going to shoot me up right here, right in this part of my arm. And I said, okay, because I didn't want it to go to waste. So they did it, and they told me, this is what's going to happen. Put your head between your legs. When you come up, you're going to feel great. I was like, all right. So they shot me up. I put my head between my legs. And when I came up, I was as sober as I am right now. Mm. And I just looked around and went, what's happening? And a thought came into my mind, like I said a minute ago. It said, go home now. And so the next day, I borrowed my friend's car and took some of his ATM money and drove to Oklahoma. But I paid him back, but that's not important. But I drove to Oklahoma drinking beer and stopping to snort cocaine until I got to my parents' house, and they didn't recognize me. But they let me in, and I just wept. I was like, I just need help. I just need help. And they've been waiting for me to come home. It'd been a while. At this time, I'm 28 years old, right? Mm. And I remember that night, my best friend from school came over just to pick me up and take me out, just to hang out a little bit. And he got Coors Light, which is what we drink. And I picked it up and took a sip of it. And I said, this is the last beer I'm ever going to drink. It just didn't work. And that's the last one I ever had. And I know that was a spiritual experience. I went to treatment. I went to a 3/4 way house. And I was introduced to a program that helps people, an anonymous program. And I stayed in that for years. And that's where I met the guy, the mentor that changed my life. Yeah.
And this is the point that we've been waiting for. So, okay, so you've gotten to this point of where, here we go, all of a sudden, and I think that you probably recognize Spirit's been talking to you for a long time. And now you're getting into this point of recognizing maybe that there's a little bit more out there than what you had previously thought.
I think I'm like a lot of people who head into recovery or find themselves in there. And, a lot of people go in and some people stay in and some people don't. It's not up to us. It's what the Spirit wants to do with us. I was one of I say I'm lucky, but I don't know if it's luck or just my experience was. I think like a lot of other people, I came into it wanting to be normal. Mm. I wanted to fit in because I never had. So I worked really hard at finding things that would help me fit in, like being a good guy, going to church, things like that. I mean, I just was working so hard at it. And thank God I met the guy, Steve, anyway, that helped me work the 12 steps. But he told me to say a prayer, and this is the prayer that changed my life. And I was using the term God at that time. Now I would say universe or all that is. But he said, say this prayer and then honor whatever comes into your life. If it doesn't resonate, don't do it anymore. But if it does, keep doing it. And I was like, all right. And the prayer is, God, thank you for bringing spiritual people and experiences into my life. That's it. The next day, I get a call from a friend of mine who invites me out to do a sweat lodge. And I've been doing them ever since. I went on, it was when the internet was getting started. I got on the internet and tried to learn how to meditate. And I can't tell you how many different things until I found the right one. And and it expanded from there. And I didn't know that any of this was I was just doing it because basically Steve had told me to, right? Just keep honoring this. We walked on coals out there. We did fire walks. And, I've been to Peru. I've done a whole bunch of other things over the years. And I still honor whatever comes to me. But this is interesting to me, while I'm trying to do everything perfectly, something's happening. I'm evolving into where the Spirit's taken over. It's leading me into a place where maybe Tom doesn't have to figure all this stuff out. Maybe do what Steve said at the beginning and relax, which I still work on,
Yeah.
But those things, and as a result of the meditation and meditating with some friends out at their farm every night, and then learning about the drum just off the internet. You can do soul journeys. What's that? So I bought a CD and I listened to it and I thought, well, that's cool. That's a cool journey. And I told my friends about it. And 2 weeks later, they presented me. I don't know why I get emotional about this, but they presented me with this drum and they said, this is yours. And it's been with me ever since. And it's been beautiful. I mean, we had to go through me being egotistical with it and all that, but it's come to a really beautiful place.
Yeah.
So that's how I got into this part of the journey. It's been 31 years since they gave me the drum. But, yeah.
Well, you said a couple of things that I want to build on because, I think it's important for people to understand, and I'm going to jump back to the meditation part. I cannot tell you how many people tell me, can't meditate. It's too hard. It's too hard. Mm-hmm. So there are numerous different ways to quiet your mind. You don't have to sit in the lotus position and om.
Right?
Yeah. And I think that, like what you just said was that you had to find the one that fits you. You looked at different ways and you finally found one that fit you. So how do you quiet your mind now?
Well, that's a great question. I'll tell you this. When I was trying to learn to meditate, and, I've been talking to God, doing all the prayer stuff, God, this is how it should be for I don't know how long. And then something came into my mind and said, maybe you should listen. And so I was sitting at my bed where I prayed. I just would shut my eyes and I couldn't go 10 seconds without thoughts coming in. And it made me mad, right? So I just stopped doing it. I'm not mad, but I get frustrated. And I was living with a friend, and he had a porch swing on the front of his porch. And I just got up real frustrated one day, and something said, go sit on the porch swing. So I sat on the porch swing, and I'm swinging back and forth. And across the street, there were these 2 huge trees. And I started watching the wind blow through it. So I'm swinging on the porch and watching the wind, and my mind became still. And I'm getting a chill thinking about it now. And I knew that this is what meditation was. And I understood in that moment that it's really important for me not to be in charge of the meditation.
Yeah.
Not to think I'm the one doing it. So I started going into other things to where I'm not forcing myself to meditate, which is really important. Mm-hmm. So now, after practicing it for a few years and really getting into it, White Bear, one of my teachers, said one day, he said, Tom, one day you're going to realize that everything is meditation. Everything is. And that you don't have to sit. and in the lotus position and all that, but that you're just breathing into your life, and your life is a meditation all the time. It doesn't feel like that sometimes,
Yeah.
but that changed things. So now I meditate when I have the desire to, but I don't make myself go meditate, if that makes sense. But I think it's important in the beginning that I did, so I understand. But I think the more my experience has been, the more connected or the more aware I am of the connection, because I don't think we're ever not connected, the more aware I am of this connection, the more aware I am of what it wants to do in any given moment. So if I'm in the present moment, there's really no desire to do anything but be. But that's not how life goes for me, right? So I'll come into as much awareness as possible, and I'll just be sitting around. Someone will say, you need to just go sit still for a little bit and not have a time limit, and I'll just go sit on the couch, and usually I sit in a cross-legged position, and I may or may not close my eyes, but I just let this peace descend. And from where it comes, I don't know, but I sure do like it when it happens.
Well, and you described it beautifully and perfectly. And I think that, for me, what I recognize too is that if I try to, I can't meditate. I mean, in the stereotypical way, me, but I've learned how to get out of my mind. And that's kind of the key. And, when I have clients that come to me and they say they can't meditate, their mind won't be quiet. And I think a lot of times, even the monks teach walking meditation. We don't recognize, just like you said, sitting out on your porch swing and then you look up and being able to be in the moment. Just being able to be in that moment at that time, recognize that the breeze is blowing across your face or you hear the birds chirping, that's quieting your mind. And we don't ever look at it that way because it's supposed to be structured.
Right.
Yeah. So thank you.
I don't do well with structure.
I don't either. I don't, again, I can't follow scripts. I can't follow the rules. I'm not that structured person. And so it is hard. You had mentioned, again, about, trying to follow the rules, and trying to be perfect. And, what is your definition of perfect?
Right.
It's because somebody said this is how you have to do it. And at some point you also had mentioned that you found spirit just kind of guiding you along the way and how it makes you feel. Right. So when you're in that place and you can feel spirit talking to you, guiding you, how does that feel to you?
Well, it feels like I'm in a different dimension. It feels like I've stepped out of it's a not Tom moment. I was meditating one time and they kept saying, not Tom, not Tom. I'm like, not Tom. But the Tom is the experience that whatever it is that made all this is having through me. It's just the personality and all that they're just going out and doing all these human things. But to come into, say the question again, I got lost.
Well, you were doing so good. That was a great description. and to build on that, the not Tom, because you said that to me before, not Tom, not Lisa, letting go of that label. And, and just being. So what my question was, well, so let me just reword the question. I have so many people that come to me and say they can't discern between their mind and spirit. They don't know when it's their mind that's speaking to them or when it's spirit or their guidance. And so, like for me, when I know it's spirit, I can feel a shift. I feel an energetic shift. And immediately I can recognize, shut your mind off and listen. But I've been doing this work for over 20 years and I've had to learn that. So for you, how do you discern spirit? How do you know when your guidance is coming into you?
The easiest way is that it's not a thought I would normally have.
Okay.
It's not a thought it's just a perception. When I use the drum, it's open. It just opens up the avenue to whatever it is. But it still just happens. I'll be here, when you're sitting with somebody and really listening to them, and a shift happens, and all of a sudden you're seeing what they're saying. You're experiencing it as they say it. And then something may come in for you to say that might help the conversation. I think it's different. There's some similarities, but different. And I do want to say this about meditation, and we're all on our own path, and whatever spirit or all that is experiencing through us is unique to us.
Yeah.
And I think one of the traps that we get into is trying to fit into what other people have said about how this is supposed to go,
Yeah.
especially spirituality,
Yeah.
because it can become like a drug. We just keep
Yeah.
chasing experiences with
Yeah.
it. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, it does. And I agree 1,010%. I say it all the time, and I'm kind of interrupting you, but, the Akashic records, my guides constantly say, take all the belief systems, everything that we're so conditioned to, that we have to do this in order to be perfect. We have to do this in order to fit in. I'll only be accepted if I act this way. And again, if you follow somebody else's rule book, you're doing the same thing. You're falling into that belief system. You're falling into the rules and the regulations of what somebody said. And, and especially in our world, between mysticism and spirituality, there's a lot of written books. There's a whole lot out there that says this is how you have to do it. This is the way you do it. Yeah, and we fall into that. We fall into this is the only way to do it because this is what the book says. But what we begin to recognize is that then it doesn't work or it doesn't fit right. And so what do we have to do? All of a sudden we recognize that, maybe if I do it the way it fits me, then it'll all kind of flow. And what I've learned for myself, and I know you've had numerous different experiences as well, but using the Akashic records as an example, there's a basic way that you open the Akashic records. It's with a prayer. So I do it the way that I was taught. I follow those guidelines. But then I found that the way that I channel the Akashic records is very different than other people. And nobody could teach me how to do this. I had to do it and experience it on my own. I had to kind of go in and out and find that, that worked. That did not work. Back up, scratch that one off the list. And it's kind of that trial by error, trial and error, and figuring out what fits us. And again, I think that the most important thing is shut the mind off. Let go of those old belief systems. Let go of the rules. Recognize that you're here for you.
Right.
And you got to find your own niche in your own way.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. I think one of the lessons I learned a few years back is that, and I think any ascended master or, people we look to, like the Buddha, Muhammad, Jesus, Ramana Maharshi, I think all of them would say, you didn't come here to be me.
Exactly right.
You're not here to be Jesus Christ, Tom.
Yep.
You're not here to be the Buddha. I think all of them would say, listen, I just showed you a way. Now, in the 12-step program, it's fascinating to me because we miss this a lot. When you get to the 12th step, it's about having a spiritual awakening, right? But there's a point in there that's written that we miss sometimes, and we came to the jumping off place. And the jumping off place is jumping into, releasing ourselves into the unknown, into what spirit is doing, and letting spirit form us from that place forward. That even means letting go of the steps. It means letting go of, I was with a medicine woman that works through me in spirit. Nahukla is her name. And she's been doing that a lot with me lately. She'll take me down to a river when I'm drumming, and she'll put my head in the river and start washing my hair. And what she says to me is, I'm washing all the old ideas out.
Yeah.
And then I get the idea, don't put any back in. But the Buddha was clear about that. If you meet the Buddha on the road, kill him, right? That's not a literal thing. It's let the idea, have the experience, embrace it while you're having it. But as soon as it's over, it's over.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't hold on to it. Stop trying to recreate an experience that you've had already.
Yeah.
Tom.
And Lisa.
Yeah.
I agree with that. That's a hard thing for us silly little humans to understand and to comprehend, again, because we're so conditioned to live in our head and stay in those thought patterns that, again, it's kind of like being addicted to the chaos. We're so addicted to our mind's thoughts that it's a job to let go of those thoughts and to stay in it. And that's even the hard part, is breaking the pattern, and not going back to those old ways of thinking, the old behavior and that. And so again, yes. 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 Thank you for saying that.
Who knows if we'll ever be free of our, I don't think we'll be free of our minds.
Well, I think that, yeah. Well, we have to have our minds, and we know that. You've got to have your minds to drive down the road. You have to, we have to have our minds, but recognizing when to turn them off and what belief systems and thoughts and patterns can be released. That's what's important to me, to be able to recognize, when do you stay in the present moment, and when do you stay, in the functioning road. But, this whole transition to the fifth dimension and everything that's happening to us is helping us to, well, it's not helping, it's basically forcing us. It's forcing us to get to understand how to be able to live in both worlds. Mm-hmm. Being able to function in your mind when you have to, but also staying present at the same time. Right. And that's where we're headed. And so these things that we're having to work through is that important. And I'm laughing in my head. I'm hearing my guides are saying to me, they're laughing and saying, and recognize when it's important and when it's not. And again, it's the thing of staying in this present moment and being right here, right now, and not letting those past experiences that confine us and restrict us to certain things, and being able to understand, okay, I don't need this anymore. I'm right here, right now, and I'm going to be in this present moment, and recognizing that this is the gift. Right. That this is why we're here. This is this place where nirvana happens, right here, right now.
Yeah, nirvana is always present. It's always, yeah.
It always is. So,
I think you're on. Yeah, so it's fascinating to me that, and as you were talking, I was thinking about, how does suffering occur? Why do we suffer? And I think it's for the reasons you just said. We stay attached to things that don't serve us anymore.
Yeah.
We stay attached to our experiences. We keep trying to recreate that or become what somebody else has told us that you'll have the favor of God if you do this. Yeah. And then you never can do it all the time, so you suffer, right?
Yeah.
So to me, that's part of the illusion, but I feel for people who are in that situation.
Yeah.
And I'm in that situation sometimes too.
Well, and we are all, because we're in that place of transition. Right. But where we are and where so many people are getting to is that you're beginning to recognize it now. And this is going back to that person that's addicted to the chaos. Right. Am I going to continue this pattern, or am I going to allow myself to feel peace? And breaking those patterns and letting go of the addiction, of living under somebody else's umbrella is the way that it's always described to me. And it's scary. It's scary breaking that pattern and becoming your own individual. Right. What will happen if I let go of this belief system?
But it's only scary in the mind.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
And I don't know if this is correct or not, but this is something I've been thinking about for a little bit over the last few years, is that sometimes we go in under the veil and sometimes we're not, but I don't think that's up to us.
Yeah.
And our becoming is not up to us. It's what is going to happen or not going to happen. And we're kind of along for the ride. And we should never judge our experience or what's happening with us. Why can't I get my mind to stop? Well, it's not up to me. When whatever it is that made all this wants to stop having that experience, it will stop.
Mm-hmm.
And so judging my own experience is not a good idea. But when I do, I end up judging everybody else's.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a good way to put it.
So it goes back to what Steve told me 31 years ago. Tom, relax. Well, I have a hard time doing that.
Yeah. Yeah. Welcome to being a human. We got to break it. We got to break the pattern.
But part of what I'm hearing you say, and I believe this to be the part of the experience, is that something in us awakens and strives toward not being attached to, as Alex or somebody else would say, the monkey mind, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Just recognizing it, seeing it for what it is, and moving on.
Yeah.
So it gives us the energy to recognize and break free, and sometimes that's a struggle.
Yeah, it is. But we're getting nudged that way.
Nudged would be
and again, so with all that being said, because we are getting pushed, the energy that's coming in is bumping against this 3D energy, and it's pushing us to really look at what we're holding on to that's holding us back, right. that old heavy energy. And so when this high vibrational energy is coming in and it's butting heads with that heavy energy, it's causing conflict within us. Right. It's causing us to, what I see, I just see keep going back and forth. Should I, shouldn't I? Should I, shouldn't I? Should I, shouldn't I? Do I like this? Do I not like this? I want to go over. Oh, but I can't go over here. I got to go over here. I have to stay in the old ways, but I want to do something new, right. And you're just going back and forth. And this is where this craziness, chaos is pushing us into pick a side. Either you're going to come over here to the peace side, or you're going to go over there and stay in the heavy side. So it's kind of your choice. So where we are is how do we shift away from that heavier energy and allow ourselves to come and shift into this lighter, higher vibration. Mm-hmm. So you had mentioned a couple of things that you had done in the past, and one of them was fire walking, sweat lodges. A lot of people don't know what sweat lodges are. A lot of people don't know what fire walking is, what the purpose, what the benefit is. And then we're coming down to drumming. Right. So talk a little bit about sweat lodges. What is...
Okay. Well, sweat lodges have been performed all over the world in indigenous communities. The one that we were taught here, it has a lot to do with the Native American community. And I'm so grateful for them for allowing us for teaching us this way. I've got a tiny, tiny bit of Native American in me. Where I go to do it, the woman whose lands it's on is Native. But it's a ceremony, it's a purification ceremony. And it's to connect us to ourselves again. They use it a lot like sun dances in the Native American community. They're used when people go out and like to war or whatever, and they come back. It reconnects you to yourself. You stay in there until that part is gone. Like you said a second ago, like all of a sudden you were, okay, I'm grateful for all the noise, but I sure could use some peace right now. Yeah. But what happens with the sweat lodge is that, of course, we heat rocks. We're in a little structure made of canvas. And I'm usually the guy that starts the fire, builds the fire, and gets the rocks. And there's specific rocks that don't explode. Right?
Well, that's a good note. Don't do this at home. There's the warning.
That's right. But we all go in, and there's 4 rounds. There's one person pouring water on the rocks, and people usually think, well, it's like a sauna. It's a little more intense than that. But it can be really, really hot, or it can be mild. It depends on what the spirits want to do. Mm. But it's there are 4 rounds: the welcoming round, the prayer round, the healing round, and then the being grateful, saying thank you, and wrapping it up round, and then the best round, which is eating food afterwards. But we got it that way. Yeah. But it's a purification ceremony, and it resonates with some people, and it doesn't resonate with others. It resonated with me.
Mm-hmm.
They're available. They're all over the place. The fire walking, he called me. I think I was sitting on my couch and he had a spot open, White Bear, and he said, "Come on out and try this." I'm like, "Okay." I was like, "I don't know." So they went through a seminar and they built a fire. And what they do is they spread the fire out. It's about 25 feet of hot coals, right? And we went out and we're singing this song that was tying us all together and creating this energy. And he was real specific with us. He said, "You walk up to the front of those coals, that fire, and you will know whether you're supposed to walk across or not." And he said, "Something will happen. You'll just know. And if you walk across and you don't know, you're going to burn your feet." So I'm like, "All right." So the moment I walked up to it, I looked across it and a door opened. It was like a door opened on the other side, and I just walked across, and that was great. And a lot of people did. One person burnt their feet and was real acknowledged that they just wanted to do it. And I was thinking, I didn't really know what the benefit of it would be.
Uh-huh.
But about 3 days afterwards, I went to scratch my head and I was like, "What is that? What is that?" And I had fingernails. I hadn't had fingernails since I was a kid. I'd been biting my nails for years and years, and it just stopped. I just stopped biting my nails. And I know that was a nervous energy that I carried with me.
Yeah.
And that shifted. It took care of that. I would say, I don't know. I'm not all about going and looking for experiences like this, but I think if it comes into your awareness and you want to try it, put it into the universe and it will appear.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So those things happened, and we did a couple of them out there. Of course, we're still sweating, doing the sweat lodge out there.
Mm-hmm. 30 years later, or
31 years. Yeah. So we're not doing it as much because we're older. We don't do much as other stuff.
Yeah.
But the drum, I started experiencing the drum. And the interesting thing about the drum is I'd been working with people, understanding I'd hold their hands and give them just messages or whatever, and I'd watch energy move in that way. But when the drum came along and I started drumming, it enhanced everything. It took me into another dimension. I can't explain it. And just thoughts will come to me when I'm doing it. I'll share them with the person who's receiving it, if it's on an individual basis. And people just started showing up. It's the oddest thing to me. They would just say, "Hey, somebody told me you drum. Can I come sit with you?" I'm like, "Sure." I never turn anybody down. And so that started happening. And then I think it was last year, I started doing groups of people with the drumming, and I love it because one of the most beautiful things I get to experience is I'm drumming and I'm having my experience, but everybody else is having their own unique experience. And it may be visual, it may be auditory, it may be a physical thing to where they feel it. They may see colors. I don't know. It's different for every person, but I get to hear what happens for them. And I know this. They told me a while back that if you will sit with the drum at least 3 times, you'll come into alignment with yourself.
Okay, so who's they?
Okay, the guys. I just say that the spirits that speak about these things, and it's not like, "Tom, this will happen." Most part to see or anything.
Yeah.
It's not Charlton Heston or anything. It's I just come into these knowings. I just come into these knowings. I'll just, okay. It's like we were talking about earlier. Thought will come in that's not my own.
Right.
And it took me a while to become confident with that. And I'll just say weird things when people are sitting with me and I've drummed for them, and they'll say, "Oh, that makes sense. I was doing that yesterday," or whatever.
Yeah.
But something happens that I can't explain, because it's really about because I'll see spirits with people and spirit animals and all that, but I'll watch as I watch spirits provide medicine to people during the drumming. And I know that it's something that isn't, sometimes it's an immediate effect, but a lot of times it's an effect that's going to happen over time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
So, yeah. And I mean, because of the vibrational change,
mhm.
and sometimes, and I think I can, because I've been a recipient of your drumming on numerous occasions. Tom is my drummer.
Very good.
And the experiences that I've had, so that I can testify. I think everybody's different, and the way that we receive things depends on where we are in our journey as well.
Right.
If you're just getting started and you're very much in your head, it may not have the same effect to somebody that can. I mean, I can hear the first three drum beats and I'm gone, and
Mhm.
I'm in that realm, and and I don't even recognize it. But there's a way. Number one, a drum creates a vibration,
Mhm.
and sound is so important in our world that we don't even recognize how that vibration shifts and changes our consciousness.
Right.
And what I've experienced from your drum is that, again, it's a tool to get into that meditative state.
Mhm.
And it's that drum beat that, if you can just quiet your mind and just hear that drum beat, between the vibration and the sound of it, you can shift, your brain. It can just turn off, and then it'll take you into a different place, a completely different dimension. And what I found for me is that I've had experiences of seeing paths, having seen the animals, seeing Buddha, seeing all kinds of different things, but also recognize that it's clearing out stuff at the same time. And I call it the residue. It's clearing out and helping to process old belief systems, things that that need to be released. And the guides, our guides, help us to get to that point. You had mentioned that you've seen guides healing,
Mhm.
and offering medicine to the recipients or participants, however you want to
Right.
say it, and how helpful that it is. I do also want to jump back to the other things that you said about the fire walking and the sweat lodge. There's so many different modalities
Mhm.
available to so many different people. And I found that, like people like you and me, as you can see in my background, I'm a little bit more towards the earthiness of who we
Right.
are, like
Right.
you are. So we may be more attracted to drummings and this type of thing because it's more of the earth culture. Where
Right.
if it's another individual that may be more heavenly connected, they may need different types or be attracted to different types of healing as well.
Right.
And so if it fits, like you said, if it comes to your attention, then
Mhm.
follow what fits. But
Yeah.
it may not fit for everybody, but it works for you and me.
I mean, yeah, there's so many things that spirit is doing and drawing people to. You know, I have a cousin who passed last year. Great guy. But he had this saying that I think works here. I don't even know if it was his, but it made sense. And the saying is, when the horse dies, dismount. Get, get off the horse. When things stop resonating,
Yeah.
don't do them anymore.
Yeah. And a
You
lot
know,
of times, yeah. And maybe we just outgrow it. Maybe we needed it at the time,
yeah,
but then okay, now it's for the time for the next level. It's like going from first grade to second grade to third grade,
right.
and
If
yeah.
if the if one day, I'm touching the drum over here. If it's my best friend
Yeah,
right here.
there she
So
is.
if one day the drumming just stops, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
It's been such a beautiful. I'm getting a big chill, like it's not stopping time.
No,
But
it's not.
but
It is.
it's a beautiful relationship,
Mm-hmm,
But like all relationships, not
mm-hmm,
all of them, but some come and go. But I'm okay with, and I think this is why it's happening like it is now, because I'm okay with it being or not being,
right.
because I know it's not up to me.
Right.
I'm not. I'm just a conduit.
Mm-hmm,
So many different spirits and entities come and drum when I'm drumming, and they're specific to people there. So yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah. So I'm trying to think of a question that can bring about, because it's you and I, and people like us, we all started our life journeys in our heads.
Right.
And what got us to this point of surrender, of recognizing I just don't want to be in this much control anymore. I want to allow myself to receive. What can you answer that?
Well, again, I think we recognize that something in us surrendered at some point. I don't think that my mind can create that, but it wants to label it as something that happened. So surrender is a great word,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
But surrender is a positive word. It's like my cousin saying, when the horse dies, just know, surrender. Right? Surrender. Think about this. I wake up, maybe this will help. I wake up in the morning, and one of my first thoughts here for a few years is, all right, Tom, you didn't breathe yourself into existence. Maybe pay attention to what did,
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I forget and I go about my day.
Yeah.
But I think we recognize that surrender has happened for us at different times, and our mind catches up to it a little afterwards. It's like an afterthought, like, oh, oops, that happened.
Yeah.
That happened. But there is something inside us that we probably recognize sometimes that's pushing us toward a moment of saying, I'm not going to do this anymore.
Yeah.
Or this isn't happening anymore. And so our mind comes along and says, okay, like it needs to agree with it. Okay, find something else to focus on. But surrender's a big deal. I mean, baptism is, I remember I got baptized when I was 12 years old, and it was in the Baptist church. I wouldn't go to a Baptist church. Well, I might, God bless them. But, you know what I mean? But in that moment, I didn't like anything about the church because they had said something to me when I was young that I just disagreed with. That thing was, God loves you, but there's something wrong with you. You're saying whatever, and it never sat right with me. But for some reason, when I was 12 years old, I'm sitting in this church, and I was terribly shy. And I got up and walked down to the front of this huge church and told them I wanted to be baptized. And I think in that moment, the baptism happened. I think that everything that followed after that was just a process we go through to prove to everybody that but I knew that it had happened in that moment. And then I got dunked and all that. And, that was just like, okay, if you need to do that, It's like Jesus said, being baptized in the Spirit.
Right.
But it's something that happened, and I surrendered in that moment, and all my fears left about being terrified of being in front of people. So, yeah, I wouldn't do that today. I wouldn't walk down in front of a church unless something moved me.
Yeah.
But I'm saying that to say that there are times in our lives that we can recognize when something stepped in and said, this is the way you're going now.
Yeah.
We're going now.
Yeah. So do you think that it would be beneficial for people to actually, when they're, it's looking at the bad times in their moment, the things that made us the most uncomfortable, the things that caused us pain and heartache. If an individual could look back at those hardest times and reevaluate, are they really the hardest times, or are they maybe a gift?
Yeah, to look back after a while, to look back with gratitude for everything that happened, because it brought us to where we are now, and just being grateful for each experience and understanding, like I think we've talked about this before, but understanding that all the things that were happening weren't just happening to me at that time. And the people who were doing some of those things, they were just doing them. They were doing the best they could at that time, and that's hard for a lot of people to understand because of the abuse and trauma. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't feel the way that we feel about that. We will until we don't feel that way. But I had to come, for me, my experience has been that I had to forgive, and not just forgive, but I came to love, like my father. I loved him that whole time, but once I forgave him for all those things and listened to his story, and this love that I have for him just kept growing, you know. And it's a beautiful thing to experience that instead of, man, we used to talk about it all the time. My brothers and I, man, remember when this happened? We would just feed that insanity until I was laying in a bathtub one time talking to my older brother. We were reliving some stuff, right? And this thought came into my mind: I don't want to talk about this anymore.
Yeah.
It wasn't one of my thoughts, and I said, Mike, I don't want to do this anymore. And he's like, oh, okay. So we stopped, and something shifted, and not talking about it in a negative way changed the experience.
Absolutely.
But I think gratitude is the key for me anyway.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a key for a lot of things. And I think you described it the best possible way. And, you know, it's hard for people to hear that have experienced a lot of trauma, but there are so many different factors that are involved. And just like what you said, you know, and being able to understand the other person's situation. They're doing the best they can, but they have a story as well.
Right.
You know, and there's so many different factors, and, you know, just being able to understand the soul's journey. Why is the soul in my physical body? Why, you know, what are all my connections, my soul contracts that I have with my parents, my brothers, sisters, friends, everything, you know, what is this whole big picture here? And if you can find that understanding and peace, then it will shift everything. And it all comes down to, again, of, you know, how do you choose to look at it? Do you choose to look at it as the victim, or do you choose to look at it as a participant?
Right.
And hopefully you can see that being a participant opened doors for different things that created you, Tom, to be this beautiful human being that sits in front of me, you know. And so how can you not say thank you at some point?
Right. How can you not be grateful?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. I had an experience when I was in South America coaching basketball, believe it or not. But something happened, and it happened, and it happened, and it affected a lot of people. A lot of people passed as a result of this, the act that this person took. And I was having my normal redneck response, right? This is after I got clean and everything, and I was on my journey. And I sat and watched CNN for the longest time as I watched these things unfold. And the moment they brought the person who had done these things out, this thought shot into my head. And the thought is, Tom, I love him as much as I love you. And after that, I was shown every experience this person had gone through that led them to the place where the act that they did, which was heinous and horrible, could possibly happen. You know, and I watched, and things are going to happen. And as we know, you know, we look at it and think, how could we have prevented this? And the one thing I knew that it taught me in that moment was that being kind to other people is really important. Things of their lives, you know.
Yeah.
And the things that happened to him weren't so different from the things that happened to me.
Yeah.
You know, and I experienced anger in a way that I was abusive to other people. I'd get into a lot of fights and things like that, and that was just to protect myself. You know, I'd tear people down with words, and I feel horrible about that. I'm really, I've made as much amends, and I'd keep making them if people showed up in my life, because that's not who I am now, but that's who I was then. But that's just a degree away from going and blowing up a bunch of people.
Yeah.
You know? But the important thing was what I was told in that moment is that whatever made all this loves all of it. You know, and when we're in a place where we're with that presence, which doesn't happen a lot because we're not supposed to be, but when when I've been there, there's no good or bad. There's no
Yeah,
right or wrong. There's nothing but pure love.
absolutely.
And that's where we're headed back to.
Yeah.
And I think part of what we're doing now is saying that, through the drum, through the Akashic records, we're being led back into that presence.
Hmm.
That presence is leading us back into it.
Yeah.
You
Isn't
know,
that amazing? Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask you what your final message would be, but I think that is the perfect way to end this conversation. Love.
Well, I'd like to say that, I experienced this a lot. I read this once and it's beautiful. And it was trying to explain why anything exists, right? Why anything exists. And it showed a flower. And then it showed a person smelling the flower. And things exist because a flower can't be smelled without somebody there to smell it, right? And, and just and when I saw that, I thought it's love that's creating this flower, and it's love that's smelling it.
Yeah.
It's love that went through all that trauma, and it's love that is experiencing what we're doing now.
Hmm.
So I think that's what we are, and I think the more we remember it, and I think that's part of where we're headed into this new dimension,
Yeah.
is being more present with that, and
Yeah.
I'm grateful for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I think that's a beautiful way to end this. So
Okay.
thank you so much. Thank you for being here, and thank you for sharing your experience and all of your wisdom. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Lisa. I appreciate the opportunity.
Well, okay.
I love you.
I love you too.
All right.